Planning Committee. My name is Councillor Anita Leach and I'm the Chair of the Committee. My role this evening is to ensure that the Committee runs smoothly, having regard to procedure, behaviour and ethics. To explain who the rest of the people on the tables here tonight are, to my immediate right is the Council Solicitor, who will give advice to the Committee on any procedural or legal matters that might arise. To my left are the Council's Planning Officers, Highway Engineers and Environmental Health Officer, who will present the applications this evening and give any technical advice to the Committee which may be sought. The rest of the people you will see down both sides of the tables are the elected members who will consider the application this evening and make the decisions. Before each application is considered, there will be a short presentation by the planning officers. In the event that an application has received a qualifying petition signed by 25 signatures or more, one representative of the petition will be invited to address the committee in support of the petition for up to 5 minutes. If a petitioner addresses the committee, then the applicant or their agent will be invited to make representations to the committee in support of their application, again for up to 5 minutes. However, if a petitioner has not addressed the committee, then the applicant or their agent will not be invited to make any representations. A ward councillor can address the committee in relation to an application. The ward councillor may speak on behalf of the residents. However, once the ward councillor has returned to the public gallery, they may not return to take part in any debates that may follow by the committee. The application will then be open to debate and discussion by a member of the Planning Committee, who will then make a decision on this application. The order of tonight's agenda will vary slightly due to the volume of people that we have for particular applications. So we're actually going to look at agenda item 10, 12 and then revert to order, if that's okay with the committee. Thank you. If a site visit is requested and approved by the committee, this will not be discussed this evening and will be discussed in a subsequent planning meeting. Can I have approval for the minutes on pages 1 to 22, please, committee?
Yes.
Thank you. Are there any declarations of interest?
Chair, I'll be declaring interest on item number 9. I have made some public statements about this application in the past. I'm also, although not directly relevant to this application, I beg that it is due to all who've been involved in the application. So I will declare interest and leave the room. Thank you.
Anybody else? No? Thank you. Are there any requests for site visits? No? Thank you. Okay, if we move to agenda item 10 then please. Matthew, could you have a presentation on that please?
Thank you, through you, Chair. Planning Commission has sought the erection of 26 extra care apartments on a vacant piece of land on Bidston Village Road in Bidston. The site is enclosed by Bidston Village Road and Fender Way, with residential development to the south and the village primary school to the north. The site is within the primarily residential area, and as such, residential development is acceptable in principle subject to policy HS4. The Bidston Village Conservation Area boundary lies immediately to the north and east, although the site itself sits outside of the conservation area. The predominant land use in the immediate vicinity of the site is residential, and therefore the proposals will complement the surrounding land use. They will also provide a regeneration opportunity for a piece of vacant land, creating a sense of place and improving the visual amenities of the area and the street scene. The provision of extra care apartments provides an opportunity to improve the housing offer in this part of the borough. The development proposed is one that enables older people to live in their own homes for longer, maintaining their independence whilst ensuring access to care and support when needed. The proposals also allow for a communal lounge, activity room and dining area, allowing for residents to mix as a community. The development is 2- and 3-storey in scale, with a mix of pitched and flat roofs. A focus on all elevations has been made, as the development has 360-degree views visible on all sides. The building proposed has a contemporary feel, whilst also picking up on details from surrounding design, forms and appearance, thereby maintaining a visual connection with the wider locality. The use of different materials throughout the scheme, together with design approaches to roof pitches, fenestration and other details, give this building depth and character. The scale and appearance of the development is considered to be acceptable in this location. The site has good links to various means of public transport and the wider road network. 11 car parking spaces have been provided within the site. Car ownership of residents is likely to be lower given the age of residents, and access to facilities to be made available in-house, including the provision of a laundry. Access to the public transport network will provide opportunities to travel to and from the site by public transport. Proposals are considered to be acceptable and in keeping with the principles of the National Planning Policy Framework and the Wirral Unitary Development Plan, and they are therefore recommended for approval. There is a qualifying petition of objection. We also received a qualifying petition of support earlier this week.
As we do have a qualifying petition for this application, would the lead petitioner like to come forward? If you can pull the microphone closer to you, and then there's a silver button at the bottom. If you press that, if you could just state your name and your address, please, and you have up to 5 minutes.
My name is Christine Turner. I live at Tweed Cottage within Bidston Village. This is a petition of 100 residents spoken to and letters received in text. Our pre-commencement conditions are: 1, that it is dressed in what's called not dressed sandstone. It's used to cover the north and east sides facing the conservation village, and in correlation with it, the sandstone being chosen in consultation with the village conservation representatives, Stan Davis and Peter Crawford. This request, supported by policy CH2, demonstrated to preserve and enhance the area. Traffic calming management, suggested by the architecture: textured road surface, picket fence traffic, giveaway signs and village signs. See his suggestions. Also, we need a zebra at the entrance, as the building is very, very unsafe because the place they have placed it is on one of the most treacherous bends in the area. Our village actually backs onto an estate, several estates, and is a rural village in the midst of it. Our road infrastructure will not support this build or occupants. Already buses, lorries and many cars clog the village, especially at the build junction. A risk assessment is needed, a donation by the developer to this required, either by goodwill or by implementation of an S106 infrastructure traffic manager being implemented to the council pot for traffic to make this happen. A full archaeological assessment is required, not just at desk but on site as well, and that fits in with CH25. Reclassification of the proposal as a C3, not a C2, as each person within that building has a key and a private dwelling. The reasons that we have asked for this is the sandstone is in keeping with the village. The traffic management. It is unbelievable that the head of traffic said that the proposal is unlikely to generate significant traffic. Here's why we want traffic management. There will be the increase in visitors is staff, relatives, care workers, 2 per person, maintenance, district nurses, 999 and supplies and more in vehicles. We're in long-standing talks with the traffic department for traffic calming because we can't cope. We balance cars, horses, people's lorries, buses and emergency route, as we have 3 farms in that small village. Proposed potential of 52 residents and attachments will overload us. 2 schools in close proximity, one at the top, one at the bottom, will result in a danger to children and resultant traffic will increase. Not enough parking spaces, only 11 for these staff. Blind spot on School Lane, which has already had many accidents in the village. Increased traffic will add stress to our environment. Church Farm is a viable business for horse livery. They could actually suffer great damage because of the traffic. Young girls take the horses up and down the road every single day and there are hacks. There are horses on Tulbar, Cottage Field and Newtree Farm. all capable of movement. Existing business and livelihoods should take precedent over an incoming business venture. To use the Corsa as comparison is non-viable, as most people walked and there were very few cars. The NPPF states good design is key. It contributes to a better place for people. The increasing traffic will not do this. It doesn't comply with the supplement planning guidance for parking, and therefore the traffic division's non-objection is not sustainable, and this needs addressing on our behalf. We like reclassification as a 3A because we are told that these residents have a key to their apartment, live independently and can have a partner who may have no care. C2 classifies that everybody takes a minimum care package. Policy states if they have their own front door, they should be classed as C3. Wirral specialise in housing disabled and vulnerable inmates. So do Inclusion, they are the company. They are funded by payments from the housing benefits for each individual and are called tenants. This making C3 viable. All have, as I said, door keys and personal addresses. The years what we do not want to enter with is unsociable housing projects under C2. This C3 gives us some protection as it's residential and would allow us them to build if it is truly for the elderly.
Just under a minute then. Okay.
The area is, as you said, a residential development and classed that under the Wirral Utilitarian Development Plan. The archaeological interest is the whole area because of artefacts. We have Roman and Viking settlements that are in this area, so we actually want a desk and a site archaeological issue. There are pylons bound next door to this new development. The trajectory of the magnetic trajectory that crosses the build, now with the government recommendations, it sits at the apex of this and needs an investigation. The proposed build is crying. The situation is not near any amenities for these poor people. Wheelchairs and buses don't mix. Whoever lives here will be in a quiet residential area with horses and loads of traffic. No leisure facilities, and the area can't support another 52 residents without our requests being implemented. It's something
I'm sorry, your time's up now. Have you got much more to say?
No, I've got just a few, literally two or three lines, I'll be very quick. It's not something we want or having this thrust upon us. If you go ahead with the virtual disagreement of all the people who live there, granting our request will go some way to benefit our very deep concerns, albeit we are forced to accept this, the inevitable should happen.
Thank you very much. You did very well to tell us so much in so little time.
Sorry.
Would the applicants or agent like to come forward?
Oh, sorry, we need a site visit, please. Sorry for this.
I'm sorry that just in answer to your question, I did ask the committee if there was requests for site visits, and nobody asked for the site visit, so it's too late for that now.
Well, we didn't know your rules and regulations for asking for us. We're residents, not council people. So could we be accepted, please?
Sorry, I'm just getting advice in both ears here. The request does have to come from the council. It can't actually come from the residents, I'm afraid, and there wasn't a request for a site visit, so we can't do a site visit now.
We had actually asked our councillor to do that, and he hasn't fulfilled our wishes. And his name is Jim Crabtree.
As I say, it has to come from a member of the committee, one of the councillors that's on the committee, and I'm very sorry, but it hasn't come through to us for consideration. Okay, I do apologise for the delay. If I could just ask you to state your name, please, and you will have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair, for the opportunity to talk this evening. I'm going to be quite brief, but I'm going to try and cover some of the points of the objectives this evening. We have had the benefits of meeting the objectives. We've met them on 2 occasions, most recently on Wednesday, and Jim Crabtree, the local councillor, has helped organise that. Because we've got a mixed community here, we've got a petition of 35 signatures, but we also have another petition of 25 signatures that are supporting it. So there is a mixed feeling in the local community to how this is going to be well received. My name is Andy Armstrong, my company is CLA, I'm an architect and we're the architects for this project. Our client is a strategic housing partner with Wirral Council and their objective is to deliver extra care for the area. In terms of some of the points that have been raised, the C2 and C3 use, we've sought advice from the council on how best to class extra care, and obviously planning class uses are something that maybe the planning officer could advise better than they are. In terms of the site itself, it is outside the conservation area, but we have spent time listening to the neighbours about some of the conservation issues and also some of the wider issues that the village has experienced. I attended a meeting and the meeting was organised by Jim Crabtree and it was really held with the aim of talking about transport that's moving to and from the Beechwood estate. Obviously our site is on that through road that's coming through from Fender Way. And some of the issues that's been raised tonight is how could you do traffic calming and what could we do as a developer within the local area to maybe try and help some of those wider issues. In terms of the transport comments, I was a bit perplexed by this was a need to say that what we're proposing is not adequate. We've done a detailed survey, it's a transport assessment carried out by Crofts, and Crofts has additional information that we've submitted as a result of obviously the concerns that the neighbours had when I first met them. And the idea of that was really to show use of car parking, why the car parking was there, and who would be there. The other comments that have been raised refer to sort of material uses. Obviously the conservation area is predominantly stone, and we've introduced stone onto our building facades. We've looked at the design. I want stone to be around the entranceway to our scheme. Mainly to get the enjoyment and the benefits of actually seeing it on all approaches. So I know one of the conditions is a condition that relates to material, condition number 7 I think from memory. A couple of other things we've looked at is the shadowing and also the street scene. In terms of everything that we've discussed, we've tried to keep the neighbours informed during the course of the last 10 to 12 weeks. I think I haven't really got anything more to add today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. There are 2 conditions in place based on the comments that have been raised by Mrs Turner. In terms of the archaeological issues, that is condition 5, and in terms of the materials that are to be used, that is condition 8. Have any of the members got any comments?
Do we need to ask for more transfer?
Oh, sorry. I don't think there's a ward councillor here for this, is there? No, I think.
Sure.
Okay, do any of the committee want to make any comments or observations in relation to this? Any questions of officers?
Could I just ask why I made that comment was made by the objector about the pedestrian access? This particular planning of this, what your views are.
Yes, thank you through you, Chair. I think the objector spoke about whether or not we could get a zebra crossing in there or some other sorts of formal pedestrian crossing. With the layout of the road there and the junction of the 2 bus stops that are there, it wouldn't actually be possible to put some kind of formal crossing in there. I did consider whether or not it would be possible to do that. As I say, it isn't. On balance, I don't feel that we could object on those grounds, unfortunately. Thank you.
If I can take hand first.
Sorry.
Thanks, Chair. Can we just get some clarification on the classification? The petitioners are requesting C3 rather than C2. Why is it classified C2?
Thank you through you, Chair. C2 classification is the correct classification. It isn't a straightforward C3, which is just a straightforward residential use, and that's given the nature of the future residents, the fact that there is a significant element of care that would be provided, and also some of the other things like communal living, dining, leisure spaces. So it isn't a straightforward C3 use, and it is more properly defined as a C2.
Thank you, Matthew. David?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just very briefly, could we have a look at a plan and elevation to see what we're actually approving? Because there has been a suggestion in one of the objections that the proposal is too high out of proportion and will dominate the surrounding property. It would be helpful to see what we're actually approving.
Here, here.
David, is that what?
Yes, that's fine, thank you. I think everybody needs to see what we're
Sorry. I'm still looking. Martin.
We're all just taking it in. Additionally, like you mentioned, Chair, talks about the developer working with the planning officer to make sure that the sort of also the right materials used, essentially the plant materials. Will the officer in charge of that take in consideration what the objectors have said about the way that the village is in character and stand the same nature of it?
Thank you through you, Chair. I mean, unfortunately, with plans, you don't really get a good impression of what something might look like. But the scheme has already been amended previously when it was first submitted to us. These large gables were a bright orange colour. We have worked with the applicant who has changed some of the proposed materials, and we will continue to work with the applicant to ensure that the final materials that are used on the scheme do sit well in the street scene and the wider street scene.
Steve?
Yeah, I mean, great admirer of the work Bidston Village Conservation Society do, and it is something to be treasured. And where we have this clash where conservation area ends and normal, life resumes, there was always going to be conflict and concern, and quite likely the people that turn up here in the numbers. It does though appear, from what I've heard from the contributions made, that the developer's certainly been sympathetic and has engaged with the group on more than one occasion, as I understand it. And there's no doubt, as people become older, frailer, more difficult to deal with, that this type of accommodation is something that is necessary, and necessary for local people as well. People are very attached to the areas they live. I don't want to be led into, the objector said don't make comparisons with what was there in the past. But what's there at the moment is pretty unsightly. I have seen fly tipping and stuff taking place there. It was a former public house, a very busy public house. When I was going there, never played darts and been there with the football team, involved in the football team and stuff like that. So it is difficult to say. And the nature of the building was a pretty shabby building. It was a flat roof, fairly level. It wasn't particularly pretty public house. Some public houses can be pretty and fit in with the area. That didn't particularly. So it's difficult not to make comparisons in your mind, and your comings and goings associated with a busy business. These people, by their nature, will be fairly sedentary and will not do a lot of moving around, but there will be people coming and going. And I know the nature of the venue. It is on a public transport route. There is quite a campaign going for a station on the beach road as well to facilitate. So by and large, I would have to say, if the synthetic materials can be used, particularly where it abuts a conservation area, I actually see it as an overall improvement, generally, as someone sitting on the planning committee. I would say it would be a general overall improvement with what currently is there and what's been there in the past. So my view is to be sympathetic with all the, the difficulties and provisos there. I think there has been engagement, which I would encourage any developer to do. So my view is that I would be leaning towards approving this application.
Not as good as an open space, though.
Are there any other comments from the committee?
Thanks, Chair. Just one other question. The petitioner asked for a full archaeological assessment rather than a desk-based assessment. Is that possible?
Thank you through you, Chair. The application has been assessed already by our archaeological officer, and the condition that is attached on the agenda papers is one that he feels is most appropriate for this application.
Okay, the officer's recommendation is to approve this subject to the conditions listed. Do we have a mover?
I'll move for approval.
Thank you, Steve. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Trina. All those in favour? Sorry, those against? One. Okay, that's carried. Thank you. If members of the public that are here for this application would like to leave now, then please feel free to do so. But if you'd like to stay, you're also welcome to stay. We're now going to move to agenda item 12, which is the Collingwood 19 Black Forest Hill, on pages 89 to 94. Matthew, can we have a presentation, please?
Thank you, through you, Chair. This application seeks permission for a rear single-storey extension to the back of the Collingwood. Just so that members can understand it on the plan, it essentially fills in this space here along the back. This is where the extension would go, so it's in line with this projection. The proposal also includes a new window in the front elevation. It's this window here, which is just below the sign. And the provision of a retaining wall at the back of the existing beer garden. So at this point here, this is the beer garden. The retaining wall will come along this boundary. The area for the beer garden itself remains unchanged. I'll show you so these are the proposed plans. The rear extension is modest in scale and would be built using reclaimed bricks with mono-pitched roof lights above. So here you can see the extension, and these are the mono-pitched roof lights, and then there's a new one here as well above the existing projection. So that's it in plan, that's the roof scape. The extension will project 2.9 metres from the existing rear elevation and will be built in line with an existing projection on the rear. The new window at the front replaces an existing window, although the new window is marginally larger, so this is the new window here where I'm circling. The objections received to the proposals are for the most part in relation to the existing use of the premises as a public house by virtue of noise, disturbance and cooking odours. The proposals are minimal and considered to be acceptable. The application is therefore recommended for approval. There is no petition in connection with this application.
Is there a ward council who would like to speak on this? Thank you, Jeffrey. If you could just state your name for the minutes, Jeffrey, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Councillor Geoffrey Moss, West Kirby in Thurston Ward. Members will note that I asked for this to be taken out of delegation because I and nearby residents are concerned that the proposed development, by reason of its proximity to residential property, is likely to exacerbate ongoing problems of noise and disturbance that are already well documented in connection with the existing premises, contrary to parts of policy HS15. I welcome the further refurbishment of these premises. This is, after all, the old village pub of the community of Grange, a community whose existence is largely denied by this council. However, it has gone through a couple of alterations over the last few years. It became known as the Collingwood and now as the Hilltop. And certainly throughout these changes, as a ward councillor and my fellow ward councillors have received regular complaints in terms of the noise and disturbance caused by activities at these premises. largely to do with sound escaping from the rear. So one would hope that when a new application comes in for a rear extension and alterations, the opportunity would be taken to do something about this once and for all. I don't think there's any problem with the window at the front. As Matthew showed you on the screen, this involves taking the rear elevation back somewhat and as a compensating alteration to the retaining wall of the beer garden. So that means that the paved area immediately at the rear of the building would presumably retain its existing area, though albeit a little bit further back, which takes it a bit closer to the properties at the rear. Now, what's that rear area for? Is that going to be where the smokers hang around outside? The plans, which are a bit difficult to see on the screen, show at the rear some part folding doors. Obviously, it's where people are going to spill out, and there are some open doors at the other end of the rear as well. And a further neighbour to the side has mentioned to me that they regularly get disturbed by the noise from the open kitchen doors at the side of the premises. Here is an opportunity for a bit of good planning practice and to help the neighbours and not allow what is otherwise a welcome premises within the area not to disturb its neighbours and not to offend under policy HS15. So I would really hope that you would take the opportunity to impose some kind of a condition here that protects the neighbours. I can't see this would be any problem, but if it was there, it could then be enforced. So please, members, have a look at that, ask questions, and if you can, impose some kind of condition to protect the nearby residents. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Can I move this to committee? David?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm the ward colleague contact of his who regularly gets contacted at about 11 o'clock on a Saturday night, a Friday night or a Sunday night by residents at the rear complaining about the noise and disturbance and smoking and not smoking, but the effects of barbecues and that sort of thing that have been emanating out of the back of this property. As you have noted on the screen, if you could see it, there is a large open door at the rear of the property in the area where the extension is going to be, which has never been properly controlled, although I think there have been 4 or 5 different operators and owners of this premises for about 5 or 6 years now. And I'm sure the environmental health officer will confirm there has been a history of problems on that site directly related to noise and disturbance in the evenings and at weekends. So I'm just giving you that by way of background. I'm hoping, I can't quite see it from the drawing, I'm hoping that whatever is put on this extension by way of an access out onto the terrace area will be controlled to the extent that we avoid noise coming out of that area by any way that we can. There isn't a condition saying anything about music being played or any other form of disturbance taking place to that terraced area. I wondered if we ought to be imposing a condition of that nature which says those doors shall be closed and remain closed so that noise isn't allowed to emanate out to disturb adjacent residents in the evening. I asked the officers if they think that would be an appropriate additional condition to add. Otherwise, I'm totally happy with what's being proposed. It's certainly an enhancement on the existing premises. My only concern is that we don't exacerbate an existing problem by moving the doors closer to the very people who complained in the past and then find that their amenity value is being disturbed even more by the close proximity of the activities that are taking place in the pub. So I'd just like a quick comment from officers on whether there's any method of ensuring, as we've tried to do in the past on a number of occasions, and I'm sure the environmental officer would like to comment on this afterwards, we want some way of stopping the noise and disturbance. Otherwise, what is being proposed is essential and a good idea and will improve the facilities of that particular pub. So maybe first of all I could ask the environmental officer if he just confirm what can be done, and then maybe Matthew would then add what might be a relevant condition to serve the amenity value of the neighbours. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, David.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. Yes, unfortunately there has been a history of noise complaints at this establishment through a number of operators. I can confirm that. Overall, when we looked at the plan, we felt that, if anything, some of the insulation acoustically associated with the development of the rear property might actually improve matters. With regards to conditioning the closing of doors, perhaps during the playing of live music, live entertainment, if I can consult with Matthew to make sure that we get appropriate, maybe worded condition for the committee to consider, that may certainly help. So.
Matthew, can I ask you to come on to that, please?
Thank you to you, Chair. If I could just pick up on the point that Councillor Watt raised about the beer garden. The beer garden is not being extended any nearer towards local residents. All it's doing, as you can see from the proposed plan and the existing plan, they're just levelling it off here at the back with a retaining wall. So that area, the beer garden, is not being increased in floor space or moving any further forward to the local residents. In terms of what's there at the moment, there are doors on the rear elevation that open onto the beer garden, and there are doors that are proposed on the rear extension. At the moment, neither the beer garden or the doors on the rear elevation are controlled in any way by condition. And there are a number of conditions set out on the agenda that relate to no music or amplified voices on the outside terrace area. We could attach an additional condition requiring details of self-closing doors and things to be submitted to us before the development is commenced, so that if people are walking out of the door to use the terrace is there at the moment. We're not proposing to restrict the use of the terrace other than in the ways that are set out in the conditions, so that if people do come out of the door to sit at the terrace, that the doors do close automatically behind them. Because the danger is if you leave that manually, then somebody will just leave the door open. So we can look at a condition, an appropriately worded condition, and to put that in place.
David wants to come back on that.
Just very, I do welcome that proposal. I just wanted to make it clear that it's not so much the noise that's been on the terrace that's been the concern of the residents, as I'm sure again the environmental officer will confirm. It's been the noise from live bands and amplified music coming out through the very doors which were on the original development, double doors, and are now being replicated in this extension. So I feel that, I don't know how we're going to do it or how the officers will intend to do it, but there needs to be some mechanism for preventing loud noise emanating out through those rear doors, disturbing the amenity value of residents. That's my major concern. That's the problem that I've had regularly every weekend for the last 2.5 years.
David, I'm just going to ask Matthew to read out what he's considering as the additional condition on this.
I don't have the exact form of words in front of me, but I did say that we could put a condition on that requires the doors to be self-closing, so that if somebody comes out of the door, they will automatically close behind them. I would say we could do that.
Okay, Councillor Mitchell.
Thank you, Chair. Just to help everybody, we have actually done this in the past. My memory serves me right. It's a clip at the back of Tramway Road, because it was so close to the premises, a lot closer than this one was. That's two sets of double doors, and the inner doors shut before the outer doors opened. It's something that we have done in the past, and it's something we could look at.
Steve?
Yeah, I mean, we often get applications specifically around pubs that sound like a bit of an expert on pubs. Perhaps that's the way it is. And I remember this when it was the Black Horse Hotel, of course, many years ago. And we often get an application that sparks off, complaints about what's already going on. Well, that's not really the planning committee's job. That's people who give the entertainment licence, the pub licence, and so on. So clearly, those sort of failures in the past can be progressed in another forum. My other recollection of this premise is that the back end is fairly low, and then there's a steep rise up to sort of the hill at the back. So there is some natural protection in terms of the geography of it, but I can't see that this is going to make the current situation any worse or any better. But if automatic doors are the answer, can imagine you get a quick belt of noise and then it'll suddenly go on another belt of noise if that's the way it works. But my view is that the committee's not here to to relive the history or the ills of the past. It's to see whether this makes things any worse. I don't think it makes it any worse particularly. So again, I'm probably going to be in favour of approval.
Personally, I think I'd welcome the additional condition in relation to this particular application. I don't know whether you want to use that.
Again, just very briefly, I do welcome that condition, and all I would say is I hope we don't get a repetition of the problems that we've had. It's a question really of exacerbating an existing problem by the action we're taking or reducing it, and I'm hoping this will reduce it, but that of course will remain to be seen from whether we continue to get complaints from the residents on this situation. But I know it sometimes, perhaps on my weekend, having a phone call at 11 o'clock on a Saturday night complaining about noise from a pub down the road. I can stand it, but other people like it. Can we move that? Sorry, we can move that condition, can't we? Can we move that condition? Yes, please.
So David's moving the recommendation for the additional condition, but David Mitchell is going to second that. So all those in favour of the conditions with the additional condition, please raise your hand. Okay, that is approved subject to the additional condition. Thank you. We're now going to move to agenda item 4, which is pages 23 to 44. Matthew, can have a presentation, please.
Thank you through you, Chair. This application was the subject of a member's site visit on the 18th of August. The application seeks permission for the erection of an anaerobic digestion plant comprising of process tanks, associated equipment and a 1.4-mile biomethane pipeline. The built elements of the proposal located at the lower end of East Street will include the main digestion and buffer mixing tanks, the plant storage, a substation and compressor station, and maintenance and storage areas. The pipeline will run from the site along Brighton Road and then along Dock Road, where it will connect to an appropriate connection point and export to the national gas grid, with the potential to supply gas to over 4,000 households. The site is located within the primarily industrial area and is therefore within a predominantly industrial setting. The nearest residential properties are located some 120 metres away along Birkenhead Road, although these properties are separated from the application site by a series of commercial and other industrial premises. The site is accessed via East Street, which itself gives access to Birkenhead Road to the north. The proposed development will process around 36,000 tonnes per year of feedstock and produce biomethane to be exported to the national gas grid. The feedstock will be broken down using natural processes in the digester, which will produce the biogas, which is then refined to produce the biomethane. Any leftover digestate will be processed into a cake fertiliser for use in food production, while any remaining waste effluent will be treated on site in a wastewater treatment facility. The site will only be open to receive feedstock or export digestate during reasonable working hours, which are 7 AM to 6 PM Monday to Friday and 7 AM to 3 PM on Saturdays. The site is located within an area within which such uses are directed by the development plan. The proposals are considered to comply with UDP policies contained within the Waste Local Plan and the principles of the National Planning Policy Framework. The proposal's immediate industrial setting means that the development's impact on sensitive receptors such as residential properties would be kept to a minimum. With regards to the potential for odours being associated with the organic material that goes into the digester, the entire process is enclosed with all vents and releases routed to a dedicated